are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds, to Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm James Harleman, and with me today, I have a very special guest returning to be with us, Joe Thorn. Good to see you, Joe.
Hey. What's up?
Nothing. It was just, the other hosts chicken out when there's a little blood in the movie, and so figured we would get our reigning horror champion.
This is pretty tame. I don't feel like it's in terms of the blood. There's a couple of violent moments that are pretty dramatic, but it's not too bad. They might be able to handle it.
I agree. Well, I always try to pressure and encourage them lovingly to do that. But I think that's pretty good. If you don't know what we're talking about, obviously you didn't read the episode title. We're looking at 2024's version of Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers and starring Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård, Willem Dafoe, and Aaron Taylor Johnson. And we will get into the movie in a second, but remember, film fans, vampire fans, like and share this episode, and let's broaden the conversation. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, ring that bell, don't wait until sunrise, it might be too late. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc., and we will get into our movie of choice for this episode. Now, to summarize, Nosferatu is a gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Based on the 1922 silent film by the same name, which actually was a bit of a knockoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but the characters' names and locations were changed in an attempt to prevent legal action, which actually didn't work. There's a whole story about that, which we're not going to get into in this episode. But it has sort of a sordid history and shows that Hollywood's been ripping off things ever since the beginning. So there's nothing new under the sun, no new stories. But we are going to have some spoiler-free thoughts, Joe, so be careful. And we always do, I want to get your idea, a sense of your rating of the movie. Of course, we don't do bad, good, great. We go stale, fresh, or buttered and salted. So where are you going to put this one, Joe?
Okay, I only got the three choices because I would have put it, but those three, I'll go fresh. I would go fresh. Definitely enjoyed the movie. And with his catalog, I put The Witch in butter and salted. The other two we could talk about. I don't find them as enjoyable. This one I actually did enjoy, so I was back to really enjoying the Eggers movie making on a personal level, and so I go fresh.
All right. I would agree. Eggers, I think he's back to form in a lot of ways with The Witch. I did like The Lighthouse till about the third act. That kind of went off the rails for me. And I have not seen the Northman, so I'm actually down one that I haven't seen. So, but interesting. It's good to know. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'd call it fresh. There were. You and I have seen a fair share of vampire movies. Probably several versions of Dracula. Several. Have you seen any of the other Nosferatu versions?
Of course, the original a number of times over the years. Who I still think is the best, most creepy looking vampire on cinema. I just love what they did there. But no, I didn't see the Willem Dafoe one, which is a little different, more about that movie. And I didn't see the remake. What, in the 70s? Yeah,
Klaus Kinski plays the Nosferatu in 1979 version.
I haven't seen it.
I have not seen that in its entirety either. I've only seen the 1922 one. And yeah, some people might not even know Willem Dafoe was already in almost a version of this movie. There's a 2000 movie called Shadow of the Vampire. And it's actually a fictional account of the making of the movie, but it turns out that Max Schreck, the character playing Orlock, is played by Willem Dafoe. And it turns out that the actor actually is a vampire. And so that's kind of the conceit of that. But it's not a comedy. It's actually it's kind of a bizarre movie. Oh, Willem Dafoe kind of goes without saying. So, I'm firmly in the fresh camp on this version. But I think in the wake of it's hard to feel like anything's fresh after After 50 years of watching vampire movies, I feel like I've seen so many. It would take something phenomenal to have sort of pushed it up to buttered and salted for me. So I think it's great, but maybe not. Yeah, maybe not quite buttered and salted and hitting that thing like The Witch did. I think I agree with you on that. As far as what's up?
This is a sweeping, beautiful, epic representation of Nosferatu. It honors the original, but it really bears a different vibe, not just an aesthetic. I mean, we could talk about the cinematography, but I just feel like, remakes oftentimes are a waste of time. This was, I thought, really well done.
Well, so in terms of theology, then, we have some conversation points pretty much for any film we ever do. But as far as talking points, comparing it to a soda, would you say a little diluted, or is it carbonated, something to talk about, or the idea is to cup runneth over level?
Yeah, if you're paying attention, I don't think there is another option, but my jumbo movie Diet Coke is runnething over. Runnething? It runneth over.
Yes.
There's so much to talk about because of the very nature of this storyline.
Yeah, totally agree. And the way he takes it in ways beyond typical vampire lore to a couple places I hadn't expected, which we'll talk about. There's a lot to talk about. And so if you're ready, I just say we should probably drop the ads and get into spoiler territory. So
let's do it.
Let's do it. So before I push that button, we're running a special promotion right now for anyone who rates and reviews us on iTunes or wherever you listen or watch. So rate, review, and tell people we aren't vampires. Tell them we don't suck, and let us know when you do. When you rate and review us, then email hello@popcorntheology.com. We'll send you some Popcorn Theology stickers to decorate your water bottles, to your journal for film notes, whatever. You can find stickers and more in our merch store, but rate and review us, and we'll get you some merch for free. So, all right. But stay tuned, and we'll be back momentarily to sink our teeth into Nosferatu.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane!
Cinemagogue, The Marvelous Era. James Harleman here, the cinema guy, announcing the sequel to my first book on film and faith. Let's face it, entertainment has changed dramatically since the first book published in 2012, and comic book characters and franchises are everywhere. So I decided to set my sights on superheroes and examine the evolution of Hollywood in this follow-up to the first Cinemagogue book. For example, what does Loki tell us about culture's view of God? Why does the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity Saga continually align with biblical themes? In the Marvelous Era, I review each film and show not only how the individual movies express gospel parallels, but each phase essentially reveals a multi-point sermon. I also explore DC, Star Wars, the Monsterverse, and more. Without compromising scriptural truth, we can sift these stories and discover how we might reject, receive, and redeem ideas for personal reflection and Christian conversation. Also, has Hollywood's messaging gotten worse? The book explores ways these marvelous mythologies correspond with conversion, Christian living, church history, and Reformation, but I do also highlight what has been the entertainment industry's darker, indoctrinating decade, as well as toxic fandom and the dangers of immersion in pop culture that just might drown us spiritually if we're not careful. So suit up, assemble, and join me on a journey to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Cinemagogue, The Marvel Us Era. Coming soon in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle editions via Amazon.com.
10 years after a brutal war, former Navy SEAL Doyle in an armored bus prowls the broken remnants of a devastated America. Jonathan pastors a small church. When he meets Doyle, he sees an opportunity to expand his ministry. The two men strike a bargain. This journey will change them both in ways they could have never imagined, as Doyle's unbelief collides with Jonathan's faith. Eric Landfried's Solitary Man is an action-packed, post-apocalyptic story with a solidly biblical worldview. This Ambassador International release and its sequel, Conflicted Man, are available today. Order directly at ericlandfried.com.
Hey, this is James, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's because you're interested in movies, or theology, or best of all, both. And that probably means you're our kind of people, sharing things in common with our community, and maybe sharing common interests our listeners and viewers would be interested in as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's big part of what we're all about. So for more information on advertising with us, contact info@popcorntheology.com. And we're back, dropping the spoiler warning as we dig deeper into Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. And first thing we're going to do is hit our popcorn thoughts. So we're spoilers galore. We're going to talk about the ending. We talk about whatever. But let's save the deepest stuff for our theology conversation. Joe, you thought it was fresh. So tell me, what did you just love about it as a film? You mentioned cinematography, performances, acting, aesthetic. All that, and was there anything that didn't work? Maybe not buttered and salted, but maybe brought it down a notch or didn't quite take it to the witch level?
Well, the nipples didn't help. So there is some nudity in this film, some sexual content, and it makes sense. That is a necessary component to the story, but I still don't need to see what I was presented with. I mean, I'll try to look away. So, I mean, honestly, that he was having so much fun making this movie, as he does in all of his movies. He could have shaved 20 minutes off of it, and it would have moved probably a bit more briskly. But I was never bored. I was never like, let's go. It wasn't like that. It was just, I like that he's having fun. He's doing what he's doing. But honestly, the big thing one of the main things I was concerned about was, what's he going to do with Count Orlock? He can look stupid if you're not careful. And how are you going to compete with that look in 1922? He was so creepy and scary. And so the way he went with Orlock more as a folk vampire, I really enjoyed. I thought that was a smart and necessary choice, so that nobody's going, oh, well, it's just a copy of the old Orlock, or it doesn't look as good as the old Orlock. He did his own thing, and I love the presentation of Sarsgaard as Orlock. I think they really hit that. Oh, yeah. And I like how they shot him. That he was he's mostly in the shadows, as he should. He's out of focus. He's at a distance. And then so when he does come in, you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Mustache, it's a
lot of talk about that mustache.
Is there?
A lot of talk, good and bad. People are debating the mustache online. I think it's kind of hilarious.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it actually made it look to me more like a lot of the pictures or ideas of what Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Tepes may have actually looked like more regionally and more the way men probably carried themselves or had. Obviously, the rest of the body's rotting, but he's still got that stash.
And he's a genuinely terrifying figure. He was actually scary. And I've heard people say, like, it's not a scary movie. Like, well, I don't know what you were watching, but there were at least 3 terrifying scenes that I thought were genuinely scary. And then the vibe throughout is creepy. It's not a boo scare kind of a movie, but I really enjoyed that. The cinematography is fantastic. I was thinking about this, before we called them movies, we called them motion pictures, but originally we called them moving pictures. And this looked like a moving painting to me, like a Victorian era, dark, lots of blues, and the way, they would, lots of single takes, long shots, lots of camera panning, and then panning. Yeah. Oh, it was so beautiful. It's such a great experience. I mean, that's the stuff I nerd out about. It makes it such a rich experience. I don't look away. I'm never bored at all, just the virtue of how he shoots, not just the story itself.
Yes, that's why I didn't even mind the runtime, to be honest, because moments where I think it's when Hutter, when Nicholas Holt's kind of coming down that pathway, and then the carriage comes up, and then the carriage is turned sideways, and then it's almost like he's walking toward it, but then he's floating toward it. Like there's so many places where, and that's where I did have a few. I suppose they're the Smile 2 kind of crowd that just is, once the jump scares or it's not scary, that were obviously unhappy with the movie and obviously kind of ripped on. It's like, I think there's people who can't appreciate ambiance, and can't appreciate the horror of ideas.
Yes,
and this reminded me in some ways of the same vibe Interview with the Vampire kind of gave off. back in the 90s. There was just it's like the idea of being in that place and being either stuck in the room with that creature or perhaps even in the torment of being the creature. Like those were the ideas that really gave this a creepy vibe to me as well. And the shadow play, which of course was a throwback to the original silent film, but yet intensified in even more interesting ways. I love the way the shadow on the curtain, and then it disappears. The curtain flips, and he's not there, and just so many beautiful. It's funny, you already used the word beautiful. I was going to use it, but put a question mark to it because I'd be like, really? People are like beautiful when they're like faces bleeding blood and what?
Listen, my favorite genre of music is melodic death metal, and in fact, I just did a thing on Instagram about my top 4 releases this year, and one in particular I described as brutal and beautiful, and it absolutely can be that. You look at paintings that depict violence throughout history, and many of them are beautiful to look at. There's violence in the picture. And by the way, you horror fans who are complaining that nothing's scary anymore. First of all, it's a movie, so it's not going to be scary like in real life. It's a movie. So if you're just saying, well, I didn't jump scare, then you misunderstand the nature of horror. Like what you said, I think is exactly right. The idea. Contemplate the idea. What would this be like? That is horrific and scary in itself, in the story. That's what it is. It's not that you are necessarily jumping in fear, but that you feel that sense of dread that you would feel if you were there or if you were taking in that movie. It's a very immature take on horror that I don't have patience for.
Well, which is it's hard for people to grasp that concept, though, if they're just thinking about how they kind of want to pull out their phone and check their, I think we've got a generation that ask them to just be present in the moment is difficult sometimes, regardless of the genre. So then you have a genre where you've got these chill moments of just soft setting and setting a scene. And I think it's really difficult for some people. And that's a tragedy. I'm not immune to that. Like we're all, it doesn't matter how old you are. Like if I need to put these devices down, and even when they're down, I need to stop thinking about them or thinking about when I will check them next. Like, how can I actually be present in the moment? Imagine what it's like to be these characters and to have that. Like, what if you were there, trapped in that castle, and even to the point where, as a guy who for most of his life wore glasses, what I also loved about this movie was the haze. It almost had like this 80s movie cinematography, like when you watch old fantasy movies like Beastmaster or other things, and they were using darkness and haze to obscure the fact that they didn't have a good budget. Even though Eggers has a great budget, he still is using that horror, those visuals, and it's for the character. You're supposed to feel disoriented like the character. Like you can't see, or someone's barely in the shadows and you can barely see their face, or the fire is so intense that the rest of the room's kind of black and you can't see. I love all of that. The less is more approach that's what made the X-Files great back in the day. Old TV show.
It's interesting because I forget the cinematographer's name. Maybe you know it. But he talked about this. He shot on film, and he's like, "It's not. I'm just trying to brag. It's not a flex to say I'm shooting on film. I'm shooting on film because it's going to give us a particular color palette and a particular aesthetic that I wouldn't get on digital. And this is not supposed to be crisp, cinematography. It's a more like a painting. Again, just to go back to that, at least that's what I would say. It's not that I need sharp, vivid, weird details as much as the shadow and light and muted colors that they use really, I think, elevate this from a black and white, and I love black and white films, but elevated above that.
Well, you almost think it's so muted that I almost think about it in terms of being a black and white film in my head as I revisit the scenes in my head. It's like, oh, I guess there was color there, but it was so. He would use it so sparingly and only in certain scenes. So the brightness of that, you got the yellow fire when he's there in the fireplace, and so many other scenes felt so devoid of color that it made those stand out. And so I think everything about this movie was just professionally done in a way that was beautiful. And I've always noticed. I mean, I think Nicholas Hoult. Nothing against any of the actors or actresses, but I've seen Willem Dafoe kind of phone it in or chew scenery, and Eggers is one of those guys. I haven't seen him have a bad performance. I think back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was Francis Ford Coppola's very colorful version, but also practical effects, a lot of shadow play, lighting, but then I think you always have the stain of Keanu Reeves in a bad English accent in that movie. It's hard. It's just like one or two people who just could not feel like they inhabited the era that the film was set in, and everybody inhabits their character in their era. Aaron Taylor Johnson, I didn't think there was a bad performance in the bunch. I can't think of anything.
It was captivating. First of all, Willem Dafoe can be amazing or just kind of goofy, you know?
Yeah.
He's like a better Nicolas Cage. He can be amazing or he can be really goofy. But I loved him in this. I felt like his performance, I thought everybody was, and I forget the name of the actor or even the character's name, but the husband who goes to see Orlock, who works for Knock.
Nicholas Hoult.
I was
Thomas
like,
Hutter.
that guy? I was like, that guy? Huh, okay, let's see what this little young kid. Oh, he's amazing. Like everybody is really good. The dialogue is so good. And holy smokes, Orlock's voice. First of all, he's not recognizable. The actor is unrecognizable. And his voice is, that's him. That's his voice. My kids were like, is that? Or my son, my older son went with me, not the younger one. The one's in his 20s. Like, was that his voice? I go, that was his voice. That's insane. Oh, this is amazing.
Now, two of the best performances this year were people unrecognizable in voice and body. I'd say Bill Skarsgård in this and Colin Farrell in playing Oz in The Penguin. It's like
unbelievable.
How these two guys have an amazing range. You're right. Nicholas Hoult, I always thought he was decent, but that he notched up. Skarsgård has been. I mean, Skarsgård. He redeemed himself from The Crow out earlier this year. Probably in one of the worst films of the year, and now maybe in one of the better films.
You
of the year.
saw it? You watched it?
No, I couldn't. No,
nobody was going to watch that.
I've watched enough people hating on it. I've watched enough clips of it to just know I don't want to touch it. But no, there's just so many amazing performances. Nicholas Hoult gets to play. He played Renfield last year.
Yes.
So now he plays.
It was fun.
Now he plays the Jonathan Harker or Thomas Hutter character in this one, and so he's been getting. So he got to actually be with Nicolas Cage last year in a Dracula movie. Now he gets to be with Willem Dafoe playing the Von Helsing style character.
Best time of his life.
Yeah, and he gets to play Lex Luthor next year and stare down Superman. So I this guy's having a good day.
I was going to watch that movie, and then I saw Superdog or whatever, and I'm like, I don't care. Because I'm Frankie.
Come on.
I can't. I get Super Dog. There's a Super Dog? I don't want a dog with a cape. Yeah, that's CGI. I'm out. But I'm just crazy. That's because I'm not a comic guy.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. Well, so a lot of vampire movies. So where would you rank this just on the spectrum? When you think about your favorite vampire movies, is this going to maybe join the ranks somewhere?
For me, it does. Yeah. Despite the few problems I have with it. It's too production, direction, acting, editing is perfection. I would give it 10 out of 10. I think production, editing, direction, writing, script, acting, I love it. So I like Nosferatu. It lit the right one, and not the remake. Though that was fine. But like the Swedish film from 2008 or whenever they came out, 30 Days a Night. There's a found footage vampire movie called Afflicted that I think is so much fun, and none of my friends have seen it. I love the old Salem's Lot, The Lost Boys, Near Dark. I'm not a big vampire guy, but it turns out I'm more I always say I'm not a vampire guy, I'm a werewolf guy. But I am a vampire guy. I just don't like most of the popular sexy vampire stuff. So I do like this. This definitely easily in the top 8 of my favorite vampire movies. I don't know where. I'm slow to rank new movies.
Yeah, me too.
I need to watch it again because I'll watch a movie. I'll give it a 3, and then I'll watch it again. That's a 4.5. What was I thinking? I'll, you know what I mean? I kind of. But I really think this ranks pretty high for me. It's not my favorite. It's probably not even in top 3, but it's probably top 5 vampire movies. Yeah.
I think there's one thing that I'll have to give it another chance. The one thing that I think didn't push it over the edge for me, I'm a big score guy.
Yeah.
What really elevates a movie, growing up with John Williams in that first Star Wars, one of my first movies, just like the score is its own character and an actor. And I'm going to need to see this movie again because it's the one thing I just don't even recollect. Like nothing about the score stood out to me. And for me, I think sometimes that's really what pushes a film over the edge and catches my heart in an amazing way. And so there was something captivating about all the other aspects, but the score was almost a non-character. And maybe that was a choice.
There is a score. There is a score. But I didn't hear it. I'm the same way. I didn't hear it. I was like, because I looked it up like, whoa, is there? And they're like, yeah, no, there's a guy, there's a composer. And I'm with you because the score takes me out of movies entirely because it sucks so bad. It doesn't work. And then you've got like Suspiria or The Fog or whatever. Like, oh, this, you have to have this. You don't have a movie without this. So yeah, I was wondering the same thing about the score. Yeah.
Okay, good. And I'm not alone, but I want to give it another chance. There's one thing I was like, why didn't I feel, what just didn't quite pick me up and make this a classic, make it buttered and salted and over the top for me? I was like, I think it's the music, but
I wonder because one of the things Egger said is he said I wanted to show how colorless this world is, but in color, something like that. And I think he does that with the way he films it. And so maybe that's a part. Maybe there's something there. Like I don't want the score to be there too much, so that it's reflective of the silent film without being I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have the same question.
And yet the 1922 film was called Nosferatu, a symphony of horror. There's just that. I wanted a symphony. I guess that's just a preference. It'd be interesting. I know some people like it when a score is so subdued that it's not something that you consciously notice. That's preference. I mean, I don't want to say that makes it good or bad. That could be a total preference thing. But to me, that also, I mean, you think about Jaws, I think about The Thing. Like, there's something about even a simple score, very, very simple music, Halloween. Like, that to me, that makes or breaks kind of a horror movie in some ways.
Even if you don't have, like, sometimes it's not like a traditional score that people think about, but they use tones and sounds throughout that are repeated. But usually there's something that you hear, you're like, oh, you feel it. Like, oh, if they played it for you in the middle of the day, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I know what that is. You'd feel it. I didn't pick that up either here. Yeah, not at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny you do mention the werewolf guy and a vampire guy. I should also mention before we move into the deeper stuff that we did do a whole 4-part episode on horror for our In the Lobby episodes. And thanks for being a part of that with Mike Duran. And we talked a lot about different vampire movies, different werewolf movies, different exorcism movies. And I do want to encourage people, if you like this episode, that's something else, and you like horror, that's something else great to go check out. To check out all the pieces of that, though, you do need to become a patron saint of Popcorn Theology. Just donating a couple bucks a month makes you a patron saint, gives you access to all those episodes, plus our Discord server. You get to vote. Maybe you could vote us and make us watch more horror movies. You get to help decide what we watch. And you can join us live on certain recordings. So I would encourage everybody, if you like this episode, check out there's some free horror episodes. I think parts 1, maybe part 2. And then some other ones if you want to dive in and become a patron saint of Popcorn Theology. So just a shout out for that as well. But it's probably that time. What's that? Well, unless Joe has one more thing.
Mr. Harleman, let me ask a question. So if I actually sign up, can I make those little sissy boys can I make them watch a horror movie? Is it possible? Can I make them do that?
It's entirely possible. We can have vote to make David Lee what?
You know what? And I'm going to make him watch something that makes me cry. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. Something that's scary. Good to know.
Want to see something really scary? Oh, yeah.
Oh, come on. How great is that opening? How great is that opening to Twilight Zone? Anyway.
Oh, yeah. We're going to go down. If we can't get trapped down the rabbit trail of just talking horror movies, so we'll pour some theological soda and drink deeply of the deeper themes here as we shift into our next section. It is if you want it to be.
I do want it to be that, yeah.
It might actually be diet and caffeine free for me, but that's...
no, I can't do that. So
I wish I could drink more caffeine, but that's a whole other story. So
we're getting old. We're falling apart, or we're just trying to hold it together. That's all that it is.
Hey, even the Mona Lisa is falling apart. So, all right. Let's discuss some of the rich themes in this film. And if you'll indulge me, I want to skip right to the end.
Sure.
So it's right to the very end. We're past spoilers. Doesn't matter. And just ask you a question, and I'll explain why. But I saw this on some forums, and it wasn't about Orlock's mustache. It was, is Ellen Hutter, our lead character, based on the end of the film, is she damned? That's what came up. Someone asked if Lily Rose Depp's character, Ellen, was damned at the end of the movie. I think they were actually a Catholic. They said one person said you could interpret her as damned. She violated the letter of the law. She's literally a woman caught in adultery, and worse, she died in the very act itself. So if we go by the letter of the law, she probably is damned. And I was actually thinking, it's like, this reminds me of a debate I had years ago with someone about the ending of The Exorcist, where Father Karras, invites the demon into himself. So you have a similar scenario. The evil is invited in, laying with it or taking it into you effectively. And so even though that seems to be good intentions, is the person damned for that act? What do you think, Joe?
Well, first of all, we're all damned apart from Christ. And it depends on what they mean. Do they mean, is this person damned within the context and the structure and the story? Or do they mean as we import our own perspective and theology on it? Because I don't do that. I look at these stories that are told by a particular author with a particular worldview that's presenting a very particular world. And I try to understand that world as they understand it. And then I connect it to what I think is reality. And I go, okay, well, here's how we would think about it. So as a Protestant in the Reformed or particular Baptist tradition, having sex with a vampire doesn't send you to hell if you've been justified by faith in Christ. Now, having sex with your neighbor, if you're not justified, is one of the reasons you might go to hell. But if you've been justified, then your sins cannot damn you because Jesus was damned on the cross for our sins. So, I don't like him saying well, are they believing in Jesus in the way that I understand it, or what I would argue is what the Bible says? I think the depiction in the film is that she sacrificed herself to save others. And while grotesque, wouldn't it oftentimes be grotesque to sacrifice? I don't think I think they present her as a conflicted figure, because in one sense she is tempted and lured by this monster. She has attraction, some sort of animalistic almost attraction to this monster, but she knows it's wrong. And there's a great quote in there. I can't remember it. She was talking about a dream, and she says, she was describing the horror that happens, and it made me happy, something like that. So she's a very conflicted figure, which I thought was well done because we are conflicted people. But I don't know. I wouldn't in that world. I think the simple story is she sacrificed herself to save the man that she loves more than anything else, even though she was conflicted. That's what she did. And in that sense, she did a good thing if it was done the wrong way. Yeah, sure. But what am I supposed to do? I don't know what I'm doing. Count Orlock wants to have sex with me, and the only way that I can protect the people that I love is to have sex with him and then die? I might do it, even though I know it's wrong. This is a horrible thing. This is a bad thing. But I can protect everybody. She owns that fool, too, in the end. I did like that. That was pretty satisfying for me. I got to be honest. He was a bad guy. So, yeah, I don't know. I do think those are interesting conversations, but I don't think about those movies or books in that way. I usually think about them as they are told, and then I kind of look at it from my perspective theologically.
Yeah. No, I agree. You're kind of barking up the same tree I was, too. I mean, it's interesting to think about maybe a difference from a Protestant, because it's like we don't believe that dying in the midst of a sin somehow negates your grace. Right. Either you have been called and elected to salvation, and you've been filled with the Holy Spirit, like that that would not be negated by happening to. It's like what happens? I flip somebody off and I get in a car wreck. Oh, you died in the middle of a sin, so now I go to hell. Like that. We don't believe in last rites. We don't believe it. Like that's just not where
Mortal
I would
and
go.
venial sins and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, so no, we don't really, they don't really get deeply into any of the characters' faith. So like, okay, but there did seem to be a recognition, which we'll talk about later, of a Christian worldview in general.
Very
so
much.
It's like, all right, if she knew Christ, then that doesn't have, of course I'm not, I can't speak to her soul, but that doesn't automatically, even if the decision was good intentions, but yet, road to hell could be paved with those, but that doesn't negate somebody's grace. And so I was like, all right. I don't think this person's going out, but I like your non-literal, or what I would call, there's the literal interpretation, like you're talking about, where, okay, how does this exactly match if this exactly is in my worldview? It's like, well, there's vampires. It obviously doesn't fit my worldview. It's in a fictional world where there's creatures that are not like reality. So to me, it has to be a much more metaphorical interpretation. And I love where you were seeing it. To me, she actually becomes almost Jesus would tell parables and he'd talk about sowers.
You don't want to say Christ figure. You're trying to not say Christ figure right now.
Oh no, I'm getting there. I was just teeing it up.
All
Promise.
Right, all right. Okay.
No, she's a Christ figure. In fact, here you have evil is killed, and in fact, she kills him with love. Like evil is crushed by an act of love, sacrifice, and blood.
Yep.
Like how is that not, like, metaphorically? It feels like Eggers is going for that. And so literally, we don't invite spirits in to help or save anybody. Like, sure, if somebody's so banal that they're thinking that way, it's like okay, literally, should I ever invite a demon in if I think it can help somebody? Well, no, not in real life. That's not what we're doing. But this movie is giving us a metaphor of the cross, a very Christ-like giving of blood to love and save. And she doesn't just save her husband, like she saves the city, which kind of almost represents the world. It's just the city of man. She lays down 100%. Her life. And they even say, like, Willem Dafoe's character tells her, like, you're unique. You're the only one. So we have a story where there is an exclusive, singular figure that can lay down their life to save everyone else. Like,
are you calling her a savior? James, are you calling her a savior?
That's the metaphor that they're going. I believe that they're going for, and it's wonderful. And so I don't think people. You have to get past that literal piece to see kind of the artistic piece. Like, what is the portrait or the parallel it's painting?
Yes,
like, that's totally what it is.
You got to move from the literal to the literature. Like, that's the idea. Christ figure doesn't mean it's Jesus. It means that it's a person that in some ways reflects the idea of self-sacrifice to the point of death to save the world, like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Or Homegirl, who, like, what a horrific way to go. The horrific way to go in order to save. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And the cross was, think of how brutal and horrific is the cross, right? It's that same thing. It's this extreme of expenditure of blood just being pouring out or being drained out. It's like, well, that's what's happening there. And I thought it was actually interesting. I don't know if you noticed it, but I don't know how many times Providence was said in this movie.
Knock loves Providence.
Yeah.
He's Mr. Providence.
He's just like, Providence, it's Providence, it's Providence. And I get it. His character is seeing the guiding hand is Orlock's, which is sort of moving, shadowy over the city. So this idea is that there's a greater providence at work and this sort of destiny for Ellen and others, and it's like his hands. And yet she's uniquely attracted Orlock. And like, to me, I see the providence of the hands behind his hand. It's like, no, somebody set you up, Orlock. Somebody actually designed and destined this woman to be this thing that takes you down and saves everyone. Like, you're going to come to this city. You're going to try to do these things. Certainly he causes a lot of pestilence, but he's going to be destroyed. That's like, well, that's a good. It actually makes Orlock a much. Yeah, so we have her almost as a representation of a Christ figure. And I'll throw this. I don't think I've ever seen Dracula used as a metaphor for Satan quite like this version.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were picking up on that or picking up on a different idea of how you interpreted him, but it's the most obvious parallel for the devil I've seen in a long time.
Well, I'm probably driven by the old Nosferatu and like the background and where Orlock comes from and what he is. But yeah, I mean, I view him very much as AntiChrist, which is,
Okay.
I mean, essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
He is and it's intentionally so. You cannot watch these movies and think that it is anything else. He is intentionally the opposite of Christ, like Satan. And yeah, just by the way, to go back to what you're saying, he took the bait. I mean, if we're looking at it from a real providential perspective, like, oh, you dummy, you think you're so powerful, and he is, right? Like one of the quotes I wrote down. I take when I watch horror movies, I take these little and I write down like notes when I watch them because I'm trying to get stuff. Now, this creature is a force more powerful than evil. Its desire is to consume all life on the earth. Yeah, well, that's the opposite of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Who says the enemy comes to steal and destroy. I've come to give life, and that you might have life abundantly. I love the intentional contrast between not just good and evil, but Antichrist and Christ. It's explicit. It's explicit throughout this movie and any of the historic vampire lore, anyways.
Yeah, you mentioned consumption. He literally says, he's like, I am appetite.
Yeah, I know. That's a great
and even,
line.
And this is where I liked that they separated it from Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. In that Bram Stoker version, they very much made him almost this lovesick. Gary Oldman, by the way, played a great Dracula. But they had this whole sort of love story tied in, and he was upset at God because he'd lost his love and all these other things. And it's like, I like that this movie just made evil great again.
Right.
It's like, or at least made evil again.
Yeah, no,
he says
100%.
he's like, I can't love. I'm appetite. I can only consume. It's like, he's not attracted to Ellen because of love. He's just, I want to satiate myself like that.
Yep.
That's what he says.
It's like, pure lust at best.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so dead on. But that's the nature of evil.
Yeah.
I think that's, fantastic. Totally fantastic.
Yeah, Antichrist Antichrist works just as well because he is, in fact, he's not a demon, he's not the devil, he's like an incarnation, right? He's been given this power by the demon, which they literally say, like, we've got demons in this movie. He has those satanic-like qualities. I think it's Defoe's like, he's a deceiver. And then we actually see he accuses Ellen and he accuses Thomas. He sold you for a bag of gold. It's like, oh, wait, deceiver, accuser. It's like, wait, these are all satanic terms.
Very much.
Like this is kind of making him not a misunderstood or hurt or wounded or lashing out character. He's not Twilight. He's not. He is incarnate evil, which is wonderful in that it gets portrayed that way in a Hollywood where even though I love the Blade movies, I love some vampire movies, but they've tended to extract all the religious elements and all of the black and white elements and make it all gray. And it's like, Eggers is just like, nope, complete and total evil. Yeah, absolute anti-love. It's like, oh, like this is something that has been missing from films. Even Disney's been extracting out, making all the villains are sympathetic and misunderstood or wronged or hurt. It's like, those stories are good sometimes, but sometimes we just need good old-fashioned evil.
Well, sometimes, like, look, if you're dealing with a human being, a person, then the actor and the writer want to approach that. An actor wants to approach that role as sympathetically as possible, right? Like, I like that. That's good because humans are humans, but to understand that Count Orlock is now something else, and some things are just evil. You're not supposed to sympathize with them. That's why I liked Godzilla -1. It wasn't some stupid anti-hero going to save America from some stupid monkey. Instead, he's actually the bad thing that you want. You're cheering for him to die instead of for him to win.
Yeah,
it was one of my favorite films when it came out. Anyways, and this is more like that. Like, this is the bad guy. You want to see him get crushed.
Yeah. No, it was, and seeing him get crushed there at the end was better. I will say, it's a classic image in the 22 film when he freezes and kind of vanishes, but the much more agonizing death in this movie was in some ways more satisfying.
He thinks he's getting what he's been lusting for. He's like, I'm finally getting it. I'm going to get some. And then he's just crushed. Like the heel crushes the serpent. Like with Jesus, like he thinks he's winning. He's like, yeah, crucifixion, sucker. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, this is how I actually defeat you, dummy. I love that's again, we could talk about the sinful aspects of what she chose to do or what they've depicted or whatever. But he fell for it. He took the bait and he got wrecked because of it. Yeah. And in the end, good wins in this world. That's wonderful.
And without even a hint of sequel, he might come back. Like it's like that's just nice to have a clean, destruction, defeat.
Yeah, we don't want a musical version of Nosferatu, Foid, whatever. We don't need that. It just leave it alone.
It's Nosferatu.
No. Anybody but Edgar's would do it too. Oh, there's a paycheck here. I'll do it. Edgar's been sitting on this thing. I read
like a decade.
I read the script because that one's out. The old one you can read. Yeah, it has a different opening. By the way, I like the old opening better. That's just me. Anyways, but it's like he's not. This is what I love about Eggers as a filmmaker. He's going to make what he wants to make, and he's not. He doesn't seem to be interested at all in what people want him to make. And that's what I love. That's what I like about the artists that I like. Like, no, I like this. I'm going to make this. And if you like it, that's cool. If you don't, then whatever. I always appreciate that.
Yeah. I do wonder about he's interesting. He makes interesting statements sometimes about religion and faith. I'm not. I probably don't necessarily want to know exactly where he's at. That might ruin some of the mystique a little bit. I've been disappointed by folks that I thought wrote something really profound, and then they find out like, oh, you don't believe a lick of it. But I found he was also toying with. It's always interesting when you see stuff in movies that rarely gets talked about, and he brought up covenant. It was like providence and covenant were two things that came up, which were kind of fascinating. And the idea that Orlock's like, you're bound to me, like you covenanted with me in her youthful folly, and then there's this idea in the film that her marriage to Thomas was this new covenant had broken his hold on her, and so he needed her to deny him or reject him. Or I say, here's where I think again people are trying to be too literal and have just one story, one parallel. It's like you've got the idea of the Christ metaphor with Ellen, but you actually kind of have this abstract idea that Thomas here is his own kind of Christ-like parallel. It's like John 8:44 says, I got this in the KJV just because it would sound better with the Eggers film. It says, ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth because there's no truth in him. It's like that's who Ellen was sold out to. And then when she found Thomas, she's like, you freed me. You broke this. I'm now with you. And it's like that's Jesus. Hebrews 8:13. By saying a new covenant, he's declared the first is obsolete. What's obsolete and growing old is about to pass away. It's like we're covenanted to evil like Ellen, and Jesus breaks those chains and brings us into a better covenant, which can't be signed away for a bag of gold. I know Thomas should have not hit, accept the terms on his iPhone or whatever there in the I always wonder, it's like, are we going to pay for that someday? Are people going to find out? We had the "your soul is mine" clause in your iPhone terms of agreement. You didn't read that. It was in that Orlockian language we can't understand. We just hit accept. But you almost have that idea of marriage, which of course is supposed to be like Christ and the church. Like marriage redeemed her from that horrible covenant she was in before, and as I go, this movie, he's playing with various ideas of salvation and redemption, which there's not just one. Again, it's not one story, one through line, one sermon. It's just these portraits being painted here and there with brushstrokes throughout the story. That was great.
I think I don't mean this in a bad way. I think he's just super nerdy. In that he.
I would never think that saying someone was super nerdy was a bad thing ever.
Okay, good, guys. I don't mean that in a bad way because nerds are smart. Dorks, that's a different thing. He's obviously, and he talks about it, he uses this word a lot. He's obsessive. He's obsessive about context and language and history. He obsesses about this stuff, which is why I was so fascinated with The Witch. We've already talked about that. I won't go into it, but it's reflected in that movie. You could think like, oh, this guy, he kind of knows. Does he know what we know? Or, which I think is more likely, he knows the history. He knows that this is what people believed and this is how people function. So when he thinks like, oh, I'm going to do more of a folk vampire who is a rotting corpse because that's what people were actually afraid of. They believed in that. I'm going to do that. And then Christian Catholics, and they tended to believe these things. And so he's not poking fun at anybody. That's the difference. He's respecting every worldview as he presents it honestly, even though he may not agree with any of it. And my suspicion is he doesn't believe any of that stuff. He's just saying, like, no, this makes for great storytelling and great drama. These people believe this. Let's respect it and show it as it is. And then, and by the way, I'm sure you had to have noticed, the doctor in, I don't remember his name, but the doctor who was caring for the sick, he's the dad in The Witch.
Oh, okay. When you say it, it clicks in. Okay.
That's the guy in The Witch. And I didn't look him up, but I know for a fact that that's definitely him. His voice and his giant man hands are dead giveaways because I have little baby munchkin hands. I'm very fascinated with it. Anyways, I think that's what it is. I think Eggers is just super obsessive about details and history and well, everything. I think he's obsessive about everything. And then he brings respect to all of it. He had occultists on set. I mean, the occult is such a major part of this, as much as a Christian faith is a part of this, right? Because those are the two ideas. And so he had consultants to help him figure that stuff out and make sure he got it right.
Yeah, and I can respect that. It's like finally to not have someone be disrespectful. A lot of scary movies, vampire movies, horror movies will basically have the mock faith or have the Christian be the idiot or have the person of faith be. It's like it's so nice to just not have it necessarily be lifting up and trying to sell Christianity, but just treating it with the same respect that anything else would get in a film, and having the characters not be ridiculous or considered ridiculous. And as that was fascinating to me and fascinating to see. And that's maybe the other big point that really stood out to me was his willingness to kind of mock modern thinking a bit. I wrote down as one theme that I wrote down Thomas Dolby was right, because Willem Dafoe's character literally talks about how they've been blinded by science.
I've been quoting it to people for the last few days. You've been blinded, something like you've been blinded by the light of science. You can't see this. It's not bad with science, but it's blinded you to see this other component of reality, something like that.
Yeah, no. I got the right grade. I got the whole thing. It's beautiful. He says, "I've seen things in this world that would make Isaac Newton crawl back into his mother's womb." And he says, "We are not so enlightened as we are blinded by the gaseous light of science." The gaseous light.
So good. Wow. Willem Dafoe, man.
Well, and then Aaron Taylor Johnson later in the film, even once he's irrefutably seen that it is unnatural, and he's sitting there, he's just struggling with it, and he looks at them in the carriage as they're riding, and he's like, my reason can't accept. Yeah. And it's like they're almost patting him on the head at that point. And
he's crashing out. He doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. He's just his whole identity is destroyed and he can't even function. Earlier in the film, he's like, I have a real plague to deal with. Like, there's a real plague. How can you bring up this other stuff? And my thought there was, I think that's how the devil works.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to piggyback. We're going to see natural evil, but why can't it just piggyback on supernatural evil?
Yeah.
Of course it looks like a plague. That doesn't mean that the devil's not involved.
Are you Are you talking about COVID right now? Are you are you going hardcore conspiracy theory on the COVID?
I was not, but now that you mention it,
No, I had the same thought. I loved that it plays with all of this like Christianity versus evil in the occult, good versus evil in general. I wrote down like the plague versus evil. It's either one or the other. And then there's one line, and again, I wrote it down, and I don't always remember where. We have to crucify the evil that is in us, that is within us.
yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness! Like, that is a line from the scripture. I mean, that is, put to death the deeds of the flesh. I mean, it is. There was this whole like spiritual war. I don't want to call it spiritual warfare, but there's a spiritual war that runs that moves this whole movie along. It is a spiritual war. It is not just a plague, but it's easy to just look at it as a plague because I think you're right. It's the piggybacking because that's what the devil does. It's another deception. It's like, I'll keep you distracted by the plague. The 2,000 rats that Homeboy had on set. 2,000 rats on set.
Real rats.
That's how you do it. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. Well, and to your point, you know what? I'll go there with COVID for a minute. Think about all of the devil's work that got done as we were cooped up and isolated. I mean, I know stories of people who walked away from faith, people who walked into unbiblical relationships. Like he got so much work done in the midst of that. You could almost see the shadowy hand moving across the globe as I think it does. Oh, so was COVID unnatural? No, it's both and. Yeah, and so they. Yeah, even to your point about where evil comes from, right? The Ellen in the film says, "Professor, my dreams grow darker. Tell me, does evil come from within us or beyond?" It's like, yes. Yeah. Yes. So, it's both and.
I mean, it is a painful and a painfully real question that people ask if they've experienced enough. And not enough people are asking that question. This is what horror does, by the way. Tell your homeboys, this is what horror's doing. They're going to watch like Dodgeball or something. They can watch Dodgeball. What are they going to watch the new Moana live action. They can watch all that stuff. They need to watch some horror to get real.
That's right. Well, because she says earlier in the film, she's like, I cried out in longing for something, like anything to fill me. Like she's rebelling against her. Like there's this idea that things with her corrupt childhood was not great. She goes crying out for anything to kind of fill her or give her a sense of longing. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. That's where people flirting with Ouija boards or even like New Age, channeling, like all of these things. It even reminded me of an old Audio Slave song from old ago. It's like where a guy, he's talking about, on my deathbed, I'll pray to the gods and the angels like a pagan to anyone who will take me to heaven. It's like, you need the right person. You can't, you can't just cry out anyone, anything. Like that's a reject right there. Like that moment of Ellen, I think there's a cool lesson in there that totally fits even our real world context. Like, do not cry out for some random spirit to fill you up, or like just like no. But most of us most people don't think that stuff is true anymore, right? That's like no. This movie was kind of tapping on a very modern sensibility too. Like I loved it. Like when Hutter Thomas is there at the castle early in the film. And he's talking about the weird ritual with the naked girl on the horse, and they stab the vampire and all that stuff. And Orlock's like, yes, I want to move away. I want to move to a better place that doesn't believe in fairy tales. That's like, i.e. the supernatural. It's like, he wants to go somewhere where people don't believe in demons anymore, or the demonic or the satanic. And he wants to go somewhere where we're stupid and naive enough to just think all there is the material world, and those things aren't at play. Like
where we're super vulnerable. And I've made a lot of I have 4 kids. I've made a lot of mistakes, as parents do. But one of the things that pleases me is my son, my older son. I have 2 sons, two girls, 2 boys. But my older son, good. They're all great kids. I'm so blessed. But he was like, he told me one day, he was like, oh, no, because we've had a lot of conversations about the occult and about sex outside of marriage. And my kids know they can tell me anything. I'm not going to freak out. Like, we'll deal with it. Like, oh, you're doing something, like what happened? Like, all right, we'll deal with it. I love you. Let's get going. Like, that's fine. But he was like, oh, no, I will not play. I'm not playing with the supernatural. We went and saw Talk to Me together when it came out. And we were talking about, I mean, it is a very big morality tale is what it is in a lot of ways. And I think it's a great movie.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, this warns against not just the occult, which it clearly does, but also like everything, all of the other things. Like, oh, listen, if you start giving into these things, you lose control. But he was like, no, you put it into me so that I have this immediate. He said, I have this like apprehension, not fear in an unhealthy way, but like, oh, I'm not playing with that. I'm not going down the pornography route. I'm not going down because it's everywhere. I'm not going down the occult route. I'm not going to goof around with it because I know the dangers are legitimate. And so stay back, stay close to the Lord. That was very reassuring to hear. Hey, look at him. He was paying attention to some of that.
Yeah. Well, that's where I was kind of surprised to see how this movie skewed much closer to traditional possession route with Ellen.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, wow, are we watching an exorcism movie? She's doing the bendy, twisty things and freaking out on the bed. It's just like, oh, wait, this is, you've got this human that's been endowed with power by a demon, apparently, as the narrative kind of played out, or as people expressed. I think it was at the convent when they were talking to Thomas, and like the nuns are kind of talking about this is how this person, Orlock made a deal with the demon. It's like, well, he's basically functioning like a demon, though.
Yeah.
He's has a physical body, but he's doing possession just like a demon possession, as we would kind of, at least as we kind of vaguely understand it with what little scriptures we have to go on, and then a lot of Hollywood on top of that. But I was surprised. It's like, oh wow, I didn't expect it to be Nosferatu exorcist. In a way.
I mean, the professor uses that word, possession.
Yeah.
I mean, they explicitly go. It's not just obvious as you watch, and they say it.
Yeah.
There's so much to appreciate in terms of the world that he was able to create. It's cohesive. Every element moves that story forward and heightens the tension until it's resolved. Like I don't feel like anything's wasted. I never felt like, what are we doing? Like I turned off Werewolves. That was just released on digital. I was like, I ain't got time for it's just a dumb action movie. It's fine, but I got other things to do. I like some of those actors quite a bit that's in that thing. But it was like this was master level filmmaking and storytelling is what it felt like. Even if again, everybody would do something different. This is his movie. I have a small number of things that I would take issue with, and most of them are really, I think, more of the big one. Honestly, would just be what is depicted at certain points, with Ellen. But I mean, it tells the story, and it makes a point. Obviously, it's not going to be preachy because that's not what he's doing. But it does herald and proclaim and warn, without being. I know that's all preaching, but it's like good art does that. It arrests your attention, it makes you think, and it brings things to mind. And this is dealing with all of these really major issues that are. I even think Eggers would say, like, no, this is dealing with themes that are real. I don't know how far down he goes into the spiritual aspect of it personally, but
it'd be hard for someone to. I feel like it'd be hard for somebody to traffic in this as an artist, and have specialists and have consultants and have all these things, and not at least begin to ponder. Okay, some of this there has to be some level of behind the veil going on. Like it doesn't land. It's never going to land an artist right there, smack dab into accepting Jesus just from playing with all of these ideas. But I got to think they at least, all right, there's probably more than the material world here. And I feel like there's too much of it in this. I mean, it was the Von Helsing, Von Franz, right? Willem Dafoe's character. He says, like, if we're going to confront the darkness, we must first acknowledge its existence. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's that whole idea of there's a whole nother layer here we have to admit exists. And that's one of the first fig leaves that has to fall. It doesn't get you to Jesus, but it gets you to, it's just that moment, we are more than this material byproduct of an incident. Like there is a cosmic story at play, and there are forces of good and evil. And I would like to think that people involved in a story and making a film like this are forced to confront that. And I would hope to think anybody watching this movie would be forced to consider that.
I think this, I could be wrong. I'm riffing here. I'm thinking out loud. But like, there's a difference between this and fantasy. Like, I don't think people that homegirl that wrote Harry Potter. I read all the books. I actually think they're really, really good. J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
She hates trans people. Whatever. No, that's what everybody accuses her of. I'm a big fan of J.K. Rowling, and I love those books. I know that she doesn't believe any of that there's no parallel to the real world with magic. But when you're dealing with horror, there just seems to be a closer connection to reality to me. It just like, okay, yeah, I know like zombies, there's no zombies, but like just one step underneath it. No, there's no vampires, but just one notch down, and you're there. You are in the realm of reality. It's not so fanciful that it's fantasy. It's horror, which is just elevating reality a little bit, just a bit, so that you're able to deal with these truths and concepts and ideas in ways that are more suitable to fiction and narrative and story. I think you're right. I think it would be pretty challenging to do this kind of work and not wrestle with the ideas that are actually presented there.
Yeah. And that's why I'm glad the genre exists. On multiple levels. It's one of the few places where I think Hollywood creatives are forced to sort of deal with it, and then as they produce product, it's like, well, they're forcing other people to think about it and think about the good and bad. It reminded me of The Conjuring, actually. At the end of The Conjuring, they have a quote comes up. It's like that the devil is real, but God's real, and these things matter is effectively. It's just so in a movie by James Wan, all these people like not believers, but just loosely telling a story, but willing to talk about God and the devil. And we really need to consider if there's a battle at play and where we fit in this type of thing like that. Yeah. This is where these movies are genius, and people like you and I see it. But
well, and by the way, all of the psychological, scientific, philosophical research and studies that have been done for the past 125 years, if I'm not mistaken, have objectively proven that horror is the best genre in film. I don't have the stats and data right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. So,
absolutely,
I'm going to go with it.
We don't need to look it up. And if we're lying, if we're lying, may lightning strike us. No, that's a.
No, do not say that.
Yeah, there we go.
I might be lying.
Yeah. But it is time for our lightning round. So as we wrap things up, man, it's been great talking with you. As we over an hour, we probably can any final thoughts or reflections, or just making sure we know it's okay. What can we reject, receive, or redeem from this film, from Nosferatu? I had some pretty simple and easy ones. Just like we've already talked about them, right? If you're going to try to literally interpret the ending, it's like, well, sure, yeah, we don't welcome spirits as a saving action for something. Like there's no benefit to welcoming in spirits. So sure, the ending can be confusing if maybe you're trying to think deeply, you're trying to scratch the surface and get into the story. Sure, of course, that wouldn't literally be something that would be done. But I think we can receive the idea that the demonic is real and must be recognized and resisted. That's what we've been talking about. And we can redeem that someone did give their blood to save mankind. and
Yeah.
and they were the unique and only one who could do it and destroy evil forever. It's like, what a great concept to redeem. Where it's like, oh, of course it wasn't Ellen Hutter. She's a fictional character, but we have a parallel for that in our story that is reality. That is something that we love to talk about. So like a movie like this has great fertile ground for conversation. And anything else in Nosferatu or vampire stuff that's sort of receive, reject, redeem?
Well, I mean, for people, and I know you are one of those guys that encourages people to not be mindless consumers, but they're listening too. And so for those that are thinking, like, I'm going to consume this, just know this is not for kids. This is not for kids. My kids watch some stuff. They can handle some stuff. I'm not taking my 14-year-old to this. And he's really bummed out because the 1922 is one of his favorites. So just know this has some problem areas in it. But as a story itself, I can't help but think like this is a win because it gives us the opportunity to not only enjoy a story about good triumphing over evil, but it sets us up to talk about themes and doctrines that are critically important to us as Christians. It doesn't matter what they believe or not. Like they're in there. They're in the doctrine. Sin, where does it come from? What is it? Evil, all of it. Is there redemption? So I think this is a great movie for some adults who can figure out a way to enjoy this if they like this. This is a really well done movie, and I'm just really glad that Eggers has gone to something that it's definitely more my speed than. Yeah, I stopped watching Northman. I was like, I barked for like 10 minutes. I'm like, I'm not watching barking for any more time than this. I can't do it. I'm old. I don't have the patience for it. I need to go back and watch the whole thing. But yeah, this was really well done, and I would recommend it to my horror fans who can handle it for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're also getting into an era where we have a variety of different systems and even services that can help manage that content. So even for adults that maybe don't want the temptation of certain content, know they have weak spots, or maybe should just recognize they have those weak spots. There are a number of ways where you can watch things edited and use services to even edit some of that stuff out, get the sensitive stuff out of there. And hey, if that allows people to engage, I used to kind of be against that. I think in previous seasons of my life, like, I want to watch it edited and all this stuff. Like, it's like, then I grew up and you have a little more pastoral experience. Like, okay, I would love some people to engage with some of these ideas and content. Yeah. And if that means it needs to be edited and there's some services and different things to take care of that, awesome. So that's a place where I've even matured and repented a bit of being a film purist to the point that actually kind of contradicts with elements of being a loving, gospel-loving pastor. That's like, no, some people need that comfort and that comfort, the edit and the covering. And so, if you can encounter it in different ways, that's great too. And heck, if this even gets some people, it's like, well, okay, maybe I'll go back and watch the original 1922 one. That's fantastic too. So
we will listen. James and I are going to be happy if you even just go back and watch the 1922. That's gonna. But that's right. The difference between being so idealistic, which by the way is immature, being so idealistic that you're not realistic. And it's like, this is the ideal. This is what we're going to go for in ministry, in life. But then there's also the real. And sometimes the ideal isn't a possibility in some situations. So we're going to deal with the real and go with that. And God's grace will cover us. We'll be good.
Amen. Well, Joe, thanks as always for jumping in on our horror episodes, which is, the upside to David and some of these guys being a little too, whatever, to watch a horror movie is we have an excuse to come grab you and force you onto the episode. So
I'm in. I want to listen. I'll tell you right now. I brought it up last time. I'm kind of like, we need to talk about Malignant. We need to watch Malignant. James Wan.
Ooh.
Hated by so many, but loved by people who know what they're talking about, who understand giallo and Italian horror. Anyways, I want to talk about Malignant because it was the most fun I've had in years.
Well, hey, for anybody listening to this episode up till now, who's obviously a horror fan and maybe an Eggers fan, maybe then into some other stuff like James Wan. If you want a Malignant episode, let us know. Again, you could become a patron saint and throw it up there as a vote. We could even maybe have a contest. We could maybe have a vote for Joe and James will do it, but also like David has to watch it. I don't know. We could come up with some kind of. It might break that. David.
Break him.
We broke David. Oh, right. No, I have down for a Malignant episode. Sometime in 2025, this needs to happen. We'll find the right excuse. Right. Even if it's October and that sort of Halloween month, if it's whatever it is, we will find a way to do Malignant this year. You heard it here first.
Okay.
All you Malignant fans, help start drumming up support now, and we will do a. We will haters. Oh yeah.
The only reason you hate it is because you don't understand it. I promise you. I promise you, you will at least value it after we explain it.
Awesome. Oh, and see that's another excuse for all of you Popcorn Theology fans that also like Joe Thorn to get him back on the episode. So we will do that, or we'll find other excuses to do it as well. But thanks again, Joe. We will go ahead and wrap up for now. Again, what did we miss? If we missed some symbolism, if we missed some ideas, if you guys want to chime in, be sure to do that. Comment on this episode, comment in our forums. Let us know what we should have seen, which we didn't, even with all of our cinematic and theological yearnings and cravings and desires and loves. If we missed something, let us know. But until then, keep engaging movies and media from a godly perspective. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.
Thanks for watching this episode of Popcorn Theology. For more content, subscribe on YouTube. Follow and interact on social media to help broaden the conversation. Check out our archive of past episodes at popcorntheology.com or wherever you listen to podcasts, and consider becoming a patron saint by supporting us on Patreon, which lets you interact, influence, and enjoy exclusive bonus content.